Okay, so welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about how to resize the camera. So as I was showing you at the end of the last video, right now we have the camera set up so that it's, I think I have 7 rows. So my camera's over and in the middle. It's about right there. And I manually positioned it there. I think I did that in like the first or second video. And I also manually set the size so that it was filling up exactly what I wanted it to. Now there's 2 things there that we need to talk about. The first is the position of the camera. And the second thing is something called the orthographic size. And a lot of people don't really understand what orthographic size is and what it has to do with how things appear on your screen. So we're going to talk about that. So the issue that I want to cover today is right now I have a board that's 7 wide, 10 tall, and I have it set up so that it's just right. But what if I want to have a board that is 3 wide and 8 tall or something like that? I want to be able to have the camera be in the center so that my board appears centered on my screen no matter what, or if not centered, then where I want it to be. Because I mean, if you're doing something like, say, Puzzle and Dragons, I mean, their boards are 100% the same. It's super boring because the gameplay doesn't necessarily come from the match 3 stuff. But so like their board is down here. Maybe you want to keep your board down here and have something else going on up here, like, I don't know, slot machines, or maybe you have like 2 characters fighting, like Puzzle Fighter, or there's all kinds of reason that you might want to have your board be set up slightly differently, or even better, have your board be dynamic so that one moment your board can be, 7 pieces wide, 4 pieces tall, and the next minute maybe it can be 5 pieces wide, 15 pieces tall, and you want your camera to be able to adjust to that without necessarily needing to make a new scene. So the 2 things that are, well, actually there's 3 things that are at play here is the camera's position, which is its XY position in space. And we're going to monitor that using a separate script, XY. We're going to make sure that the camera's position is, if not in the center, at least where you want it to be. The other things that come into play is something called the orthographic size. Orthographic size. This word orthographic is really, I don't know, kind of scary if you don't know what it means. If you've dealt with 3D modeling, you probably know what orthographic is, but just to let you know, like for our intent, dealing with 2D, everything in 2D is orthographic. You only really need to know the difference between orthographic and perspective if you're switching between 2D and 3D, or if you want to make sure that you understand the difference between how 2D works and 3D works. Orthographic cameras make everything look the exact same size as something else that is its size, no matter how far away from the camera it is. So if something is 1 unity unit tall, it is 1 unity unit tall if it's right next to the camera, and it is also 1 unity unit tall if it's 1,000 units away from the camera. It maintains its size no matter where it is, instead of having that kind of foreshortening thing happen, whereas a perspective camera doesn't allow that to happen. Anyway, orthographic size is in unity, how many unity units there is from where the camera is to the top of the frame. So the distance from here to here is the orthographic size. So if the orthographic size is 5, that means there's 5 unity units from the camera to the top of the frame. And if you change your frame, the camera will adjust for that. So yeah, and then the other thing that we need to talk about is something called aspect ratio. And the reason aspect ratio is important is it goes along with orthographic size. So orthographic size has to do with only the vertical part. And so you could have an orthographic size of 5, and if you have a window that's 9 by 16, it would look like this, and this has an orthographic size of 5. But if you have a window that's 16 by 16, a square window, this could have the same orthographic size, which doesn't seem right because there's more area that the camera's covering here. That's where aspect ratio comes in. Aspect ratio is the ratio of the, it's 1/2 of the width. So like here, so let's say that we have an orthographic size of 5. That means that our window in total is 10 units tall. If our window is 5 units wide, then our aspect ratio is 5/10 or 1/2. And how that results to your orthographic size is you're kind of, I don't know, creating a fraction that works the way you want it to. And we're going to be using that when we set up our kind of an offset to make sure that our board's always going to be in frame. So yeah, let's dive right in. Okay, so here I am back in the project. The first thing I want to do is I want to make a new script, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, camera scaler, camera sizer, size changer, whatever you want to call it. So I'm in my scripts folder. I'm creating a new C# script, and I'm going to call this camera scaler. Okay, and then I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio. All right, so what I want to do is first deal with the camera's position. So I want the camera to always be where I want it to be. Now, I could control that by having this look for the board and having it base itself on the board's width and height. I could also do this by making a method in the camera scaler and have the board call that method to reposition it where the board wants it to be. So like if the board is going to change midway through the game, maybe you can have the board trigger a method that triggers a method in the, or sorry, you could have the board trigger a method in the camera scaler that moves it. You could also not necessarily have this script at all. Instead, you could just have the board have a reference to the camera and have the board control all of it when it's doing its setup method. To me, it makes sense to keep this separate just because I want to make sure I know where to go if I want to change camera stuff. So I'm going to go with the first method myself. So what I want to do here is I want to make a reference to the board. So I'm going to say, I'm going to make it, I might as well make it private. So private board, and I'm going to complete the reference in the start method by saying board equals find object of type. And the object I want to find is something that's called a board. I'm only ever going to have one of these, which is why it's okay to do it this way. Okay, and now I'm going to have a little method here that I'm going to use to reposition. So I'm going to call this void reposition camera. And might as well pass in a couple arguments here. So the two arguments I'm going to pass in are both float values. I'm going to have this be float, let's just call it x, and float y. So these two arguments are going to be pretty much telling me where to put my camera. I'm going to save this really quickly, hop back into Unity because I want to show you something here. If I hit play, I manually reposition the camera here, but it's going to make sense when I show you this. So right now my camera's position is at 3.5, and it's at 3.5 because 0, 0 is right here. So this is 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So 3 is directly in the middle of my columns, and then it's at 5 because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this purple dot right here is exactly where the camera is. And if I look over at my scene, I can see that that's exactly true. Also, while I'm looking here inside Unity, I can see that I have let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and change So my orthographic size is 7.5 because that change is 0.5. So that's where my orthographic size comes from. Okay, so if I jump back into Unity, what I want to do is I want to send my camera to be directly in the middle and halfway up of where my dots start. So I'm going to say in this reposition camera method, let's make a new vector 2. Let's say vector 2, and I'm going to call it temp position is equal to a new vector 2. And this new vector 2 is going to be, let's say, mathf.round. And I'm rounding because I want to round up, and I'm rounding the x divided by 2. And I'm going to do the same thing to my y. Yeah. Actually, no, I'm not going to round my y. I'm going to leave that. No, I will. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. So mathf.round y divided by 2. Oh, comma in between those, just like as if it was an xy coordinate. So that just creates the temporary position. Now I want to actually enact the temporary position. So I'm going to say transform.position is equal to temp position. So I'm going to move the camera's position there. Now I need to actually call this method, and my method I'm going to say actually I'm going to do some defensive programming. First I want to check to make sure that something was assigned to the board, and only do this if something was assigned to the board. So if board is not null, then I'm going to do reposition camera, and I'm going to do board.width, board.height. If I don't put this, if board is not null, then something could happen and like my board script could become, I don't know, unattached. And if that happens, the whole game won't work. But this is just defensive programming, specifically because of the errors I've been making up until now. The fact that I'm a little bit sloppy. All right, so I'm going to save my script here, and I'm going to pop back into Unity. And I'm going to find my main camera. Once this is done saving, or compiling. I'm going to find my main camera. I'm going to put my camera scaler on it. There's nothing I need to assign right now, but it is good to note that if I go to my board here, I'm going to change my width. I'm going to make my width, say, I don't know, 14. And I'll make my height something crazy, say 20. Actually, I'm going to show you something else later, so let's just say 14 by 14. So if I hit play now, it's going to think for a second. Oh, maybe not. So it repositioned itself exactly where it's supposed to be. For some reason I can't see it though. That's weird. I wonder why. Let's go into 3D here really quickly. Oh, that's why. Duh. So the reason why, I don't know if you guys caught that or not, I did it a little too fast. Let's do it again here. So there's a reason why we're not seeing it here, but we can see it here. If I grab my camera here and pull it back, all of a sudden we can see it. And I made it so that my camera's position, let's go out of 3D here. My camera's position is exactly where it's supposed to be. So I'm halfway over, I'm halfway up, and everything looks fine. The problem is my orthographic size is still 7.5. In order for me to fit everything in, my orthographic size would have to be significantly larger. Actually, am I halfway over? 0, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. No, I guess I don't need to do that round. Okay, so let's fix those two issues here. So first things first, I'm going to change this from mathf.round to just x divided by 2. Don't know what I was thinking. And change this mathf.round to y divided by 2. That should fix that part. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to come up with a float value of how far back I want the camera to be by default. So I'm going to call this a public float and call this camera offset. And I'm going to change this from a vector 2 to a vector 3 so that I can accommodate that new offset and make sure that my camera is as far back as it needs to be. And I'm going to add in that camera offset right down here. All right, cool. Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right, so now if I save that, I'm going to pop back into Unity here. My orthographic size still isn't going to be what I want it to be, but my camera should appear in the middle now. I'm going to make my camera offset -10. So that's where it is currently on the z-axis if you take a look right up here. And if I go back to my board, 14 by 14, if I hit play, the camera should be in the middle now. And there we go. Okay, so I just need to change my orthographic size. Hold on, let me make sure it's in the middle. Why is it not? Oh, okay. Haha. That's why it's not. It's one off in each direction, and the reason it's one off in each direction is I need to not use the width. I need to use the width -1 because even though there's 14 columns, they're registering as 0 through 13. So I really need to treat it as if it's 13 because this is 13 here, not 14. So let's fix that again really quickly here. This is what I get for prepping like 3 days ago. So instead of using board.width, I'm going to use board.width -1. And I'm going to use board.height -1. All right, now if I go back in here, I'll hit play. Now it's just bugging me, the fact that it wasn't exactly in the middle like I wanted it to be. There we go, that's better. And now if I look in the scene, cool, I got 2 over here, I got 2 over there. Nice and in the middle. All right, so now let's deal with that orthographic size. So my game, I'm making it in 16 by 10 portrait, which is 10 by 16. So I have a width of 10 and a height of 16. So I want to make sure that my my orthographic size is always large enough that I have some wiggle room on either end. And so what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to artificially talk about that aspect ratio. So let's do that. Aha, it's algebra again. You thought you were done, but you are not. So this one's actually much simpler than the last one. We don't have to worry about the aspect ratio. Essentially what we want to do is when we're setting the orthographic size, we want to ask a quick question to the board class. We want to say, is the board's width greater than or equal to its height? You can just do greater than, you don't have to do equal to. And if it is, then we're going to do it the way that we did it before, meaning we're going to say the orthographic size is equal to width divided by 2 plus padding divided by 0.625. So we're going to encapsulate that orthographic size line that we did before inside of an if statement. There's another way that we could do this, but it's just going to be simpler to explain it this way. And then we're going to say, well, if that's not the case, if width isn't greater than or equal to height, then height is greater than width. So what we want to do instead is we want to make sure that we have the padding apply instead of to the edge, the padding applies to the top and the bottom. And to make it apply to the top and the bottom, all we have to do is just say the orthographic size is equal to the height divided by 2 plus padding. So there we go. I guess no algebra. Aw, unless you count variables algebra. Aw, no algebra. Makes me sad. So let's go back to Visual Studio and let's put that in. Okay, so here I am back in Visual Studio. So the way we have it right now, when we do this reposition camera method, we have our transformed up position, We set our orthographic size to be width divided by 2 plus padding divided by aspect ratio. But we only want it to do this if the width of the board is greater than or equal to the height of the board. So to make it so that we actually make that check before we do anything, I'm going to say if board.width, and I don't have to do that board not null thing here because I'm only, well, in this case I don't. In the future I might. Well, no, we'll be good. Never mind, sorry. If board.width is greater than or equal to board.height, then I want to do this stuff, and else I want to say that the camera.main dot orthographic size is equal to board.height divided by 2 plus padding. That should be it. So I'm going to save my script. I'm going to pop back into Unity here, and I still have it set, as soon as it's done compiling, I still have it set so that my board is skinny and tall. Sorry, I have a newborn kitten, and I thought I heard her. Anyway, I still have it set so that my board is skinny and tall. So if I hit play, it should automatically adjust itself just fine. So there we go. So we got all the space on the side, but that's because the board is skinny and tall. Let's resize it. Let's make it wide and not tall. So let's say that our width is 15 and our height this time is 5. We want to make sure that it all appears on the board. So if I hit play, there we go. So we've got the padding that we want. Now you can change your padding here in the main camera settings, and you can also change your aspect ratio. So if you change your aspect ratio away from being this 16 by 10 portrait, remember that you're going to have to recalculate this. And it's width over height, which is why I have it here as 1016. So 10 divided by 16 is 0.625, which is what that is. If it's 916, which is what I think most iPhone displays are, it's going to be slightly different. You just have to do 9 divided by 16 and then round to, I don't know, 3 decimal points, you'll be fine. And then if you want less padding or more padding, it's a float value, so you can put decimals in there. We can say we want 0.5 padding if you want less padding, and then that way if I hit play, it'll appear, there we go, closer to the edges of the display. All right, cool. So next up, I know I've been saying we'll go over this forever, is the empty spaces and then jelly tiles, and then we'll do like scoring and pause menus and new game scenes. Those are all super easy. And then the last thing that we'll cover is the hard stuff, which is if the board gets deadlocked, if there's no more moves left, and how to suggest a move. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed this. Please feel free to give me a like if you learned anything. And if you didn't learn anything, you can still give me a like. They're not paying any attention. It's fine. They're not going to ask you. You can follow me on Twitter. I promise I will get better at following on Twitter, and I will get the Discord server information out there for any of you who are interested in that. Have yourself a wonderful day, and yeah, enjoy.